A person watches a shocking news story and asks a difficult question. How could someone who seemed good do something terrible? It's a question that has fascinated psychologists for decades. He begins to wonder if ordinary people could make terrible choices under the right circumstances. The thought makes him feel uncomfortable. He thinks about the idea of evil and realizes that this story isn't really about monsters. It's about understanding human behavior. He looks around at ordinary people and starts to question what separates good actions from bad ones. The answer may not be as simple as he once believed. He stares at his own reflection and wonders what he would do in a difficult situation. The question feels personal. He opens a psychology book, searching for answers. What he discovers challenges many common beliefs. He asks the question again: why do good people do bad things? The answer turns out to be more complicated than expected. As he thinks more deeply, he begins to realize that human nature has both light and darkness. This realization feels unsettling. He examines the balance between good and bad behavior. He starts to understand that people are rarely completely one or the other. He decides to continue searching for the truth. The journey is only beginning. He remembers growing up believing that bad actions only come from bad people. Psychology suggests otherwise. As he studies human behavior, he discovers that reality is much more complex. This surprises him. He reads about people who committed terrible acts, but believed they were doing the right thing. The discovery is shocking. He realizes that most people don't see themselves as villains. They often believe their actions are justified. He learns that the human brain is extremely skilled at creating explanations for our behavior. This helps protect our self-image. He imagines making a mistake and notices how quickly the mind creates excuses. Nobody wants to think of themselves as a bad person. He writes down common justifications people use. The list grows longer than he expected. He thinks, maybe I had no choice. This kind of thinking can make harmful actions feel acceptable. He notices how easily people follow what everyone else is doing. The desire to fit in can be very powerful. He realizes that people often convince themselves they're acting for a good reason. This may be one of the most dangerous illusions. He discovers a famous psychology experiment conducted in 1961. The results changed how scientists viewed human behavior. He learns that the experiment tested how far ordinary people would obey authority. The question itself feels frightening. He imagines sitting in front of a machine, believing that someone else will be hurt by his actions. He feels anxious. As the instructions continue, he becomes increasingly uncomfortable. Yet the pressure to obey remains strong. He notices the stress and fear building inside him. His conscience and authority are now in conflict. He wipes sweat from his face while trying to decide what to do. The decision feels impossible. He feels emotional and distressed, but the pressure to continue does not disappear. Despite his discomfort, he follows the instructions. Sometimes obedience can overpower personal judgment. He stops and asks himself an important question. Why would anyone continue? He realizes that authority has a powerful influence on human behavior. Many people obey simply because they are told to. He looks at the results of the experiment and feels shocked. Most participants obeyed much further than anyone expected. He understands that these participants were not evil people. They were ordinary individuals. He thinks about teachers, workers, and parents. Any of them could have been part of the experiment. He begins to understand a difficult truth. Ordinary people are capable of extraordinary mistakes. He realizes that simply following orders can sometimes lead people to do terrible things. He learns that humans are deeply social creatures. The need to belong influences many of our decisions. He realizes that acceptance from others can feel more important than being right. This thought makes him uncomfortable. He feels the pressure of the group pulling him in different directions. Sometimes fitting in feels easier than standing out. He imagines everyone around him believing the same thing. Going against the crowd suddenly feels very difficult. Standing alone feels frightening. He begins to understand why so many people follow the majority. He hesitates before speaking up. Fear of rejection can silence even good people. He discovers that psychologists have studied this behavior for decades. The results are surprisingly consistent. He realizes that peer pressure doesn't disappear after childhood. Adults experience it every day. He imagines being surrounded by coworkers who all agree with each other. The pressure to conform feels overwhelming. He sees how people can slowly become part of harmful groups. Often they don't notice it happening. He watches how false information spreads from person to person. The desire to belong can overpower critical thinking. He realizes that people sometimes hurt others just to avoid being excluded. This truth is difficult to accept. He reminds himself that these people didn't think they were evil. They believed they were doing what everyone else did. He notices how personal values can slowly become less important than group acceptance. He understands that groups can become more powerful than individual conscience. He learns that most bad decisions don't happen all at once. They happen one small step at a time. He takes another step forward and realizes how easy it is to justify small mistakes. He tells himself that one small lie won't hurt anyone. It feels harmless. Then another compromise follows. The line between right and wrong starts to blur. As he continues climbing, each decision becomes easier than the last. He looks back and barely recognizes how far he has come. The changes happen slowly. Suddenly, he stops and realizes something is wrong. A feeling of fear begins to grow. He discovers that he has crossed a line he never intended to cross. The realization is painful. Psychologists call this the slippery slope effect. Small actions can lead to major consequences. He understands that tiny compromises can eventually destroy important values. He sees how small acts of dishonesty can grow into serious deception. He realizes that repeated compromises can slowly break a person's principles. He asks himself a frightening question. Could this happen to anyone? He learns that most people never notice the gradual change in their behavior. By the time they realize what happened, the damage may already be done. He discovers that the human brain hates feeling guilty. It works hard to protect our self-image. His mind begins creating explanations to make uncomfortable actions feel acceptable. He writes down the stories people tell themselves after making bad decisions. He thinks, I did it for my family. The explanation feels comforting. Then he thinks, I was only protecting myself. Once again, the mind finds a reason. He tells himself that anyone else would have done the same thing. This makes him feel less guilty. The weight of guilt begins to disappear, but so does fear easier to repeat. If someone always believes they are right, they never have to change. He understands that refusing to face mistakes can become a dangerous habit. He finally accepts an uncomfortable truth about human nature. Good people can do bad things. He looks at himself and realizes that nobody is completely immune to these influences. He understands that human beings are not monsters. They are simply human. He reflects on everything he has learned. Understanding our weaknesses may be our greatest strength. As he walks toward the light, he realizes the most important lesson. Recognizing our capacity for darkness is the first step toward choosing what is right.